The first blast hit just before dawn, tearing through the industrial silence of the Port Beaufort shipping yards. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't a backfire. The sound was too controlled, too deliberate. The flat, heavy thud of military-grade C4 muffled by reinforced steel. It was July 9th, 1984, 4:23 a.m., at the loading perimeter of the Falcon Security Armor Depot in Port Beaufort, Georgia. The air was thick with humidity, diesel fumes, and the sharp, coppery tang of freshly detonated metal. Sirens, initially muted, fractured the darkness, their strobing red lights cutting frantic arcs through the coastal mist. Three figures, two large, one slight, moved with practiced, brutal efficiency. The armored truck, a heavy, boxy beast, lay on its side, the stage collision with a loading bay already complete. But the main vault inside the depot was the real target. The Seafer had breached the reinforced door. A quick, silent figure, small and fast, hauled heavy canvas sacks from the vault floor. Then the clean plan dissolved. A lone Port Beaufort patrol car, running a routine pre-dawn sweep, rolled up, its spotlight catching the three-armed shadows. Crack! The sound of the patrolman's windshield shattering was thin and sharp compared to the deep chest thump of the explosion. The patrolman, Rookie Johnson, was dead before his cruiser finished coasting. He was shot through the head, a single cold professional kill. The bags of cash were dropped near a stormwater drain, then retrieved. The original escape route, a prearranged rendezvous point by the river, was instantly aborted. A man shouted, his voice rough and low, "The sewers!" Now, they plunged into the open drainage grate, disappearing into the subterranean darkness of the port city. They had secured the hall, but the clean in and out had just become a brutal, messy murder case. Subscribe so you don't miss the next part, because the trail leads somewhere far stranger than anyone expected. And hit the like button if you want to find out who killed Rookie Johnson and what happened to the $3 million. The Falcon Security Depot was a mausoleum of broken metal and shattered glass by 6 a.m. Yellow tape cordoned off the entire dockside area. The air had traded the acrid smell of explosives for the synthetic sense of emergency response. Engine oil, fresh coffee from a mobile canteen, and a sterile odor of forensics chemicals. Detective Sergeant John McIntyre arrived late, not because of traffic, the city was still asleep, but because he had stopped to look at the water. He was a creature of habit and history, and he knew a crime scene wasn't just metal and blood. It was environment, context, and time. Port Beaufort had been built on smuggling and naval secrets, and the river was its memory. Mac was 39, but he looked 49, largely due to the landscape of worry lines etched around his eyes and a permanent 5 o'clock shadow he never quite managed to shave away. He was a tall man, moving with the heavy, considered stride of someone who had seen too much and was tired of the viewing. His suit, a conservative charcoal gray, was functional rather than fashionable, and his only concession to vanity was a pair of impeccably polished leather shoes. He carried the weight of a recent failure, a kidnapping case that ended with a witness dying in protective custody, a mistake Max still replayed every night. The department had exiled him, not officially, but spiritually, moving him sideways from the prestigious state police homicide to the newly created, quietly overlooked major crimes unit. His office was on the 3rd floor of the public safety building, a place that smelled permanently of stale air, conditioning, and decades of bad coffee. On his desk lay an open copy of Thucydides's History of the Peloponnesian War, Mac's way of seeking logical precedent in an illogical world. The conflict, the betrayals, the cyclical nature of human greed, it was all there, just with different uniforms. He found Lieutenant Davis, the lead uniform officer, standing over the wreckage of the armored car, a Brinks 700 series model, now listing grotesquely against the concrete barrier. "Mac, good to see you." "Thought major crimes was still on that white-collar vacation," Davis said, his voice flat with exhaustion. "Paperwork is relentless, Lieutenant. What do we have?" Mac walked past the overturned truck. It wasn't the main story. The truck looked like a prop. Damaged, yes, but not destroyed. The real damage was further in. $3 million in cash, bound for the Federal Reserve. 2 guards inside the vault area, 1 driver, 1 riding shotgun. They're all detained, shell-shocked. And 1 patrolman, Johnson, dead. Davis pointed toward a spot 50 yards away where a medical examiner was zipping up a black body bag next to the patrol car. Mac didn't look at the body bag. He looked at the patrol car's fractured windshield. The single bullet hole was low on the passenger side, near the dash, but clearly angled to hit the driver. No spray pattern. No panic shot. That's a target kill, Davis. You don't shoot a cop if you plan on driving away clean, Mac murmured, pulling a pair of thin leather gloves from his pocket. The main focus of the robbery was the vault door to the depot's secure cash room, now peeled back like a giant sardine canned by a secondary blast. The internal guards, Marcus Thorne and Evelyn Reed, were professional, but their description of events was contradictory and rehearsed. They said they were securing the vault, getting ready for the morning transfer, Davis explained. So the truck driver, Victor Chun, came back inside, yelling something about a blowout, and that's when the first explosion went off outside. Matt crouched by the vault door. The explosion that hit the vault was precise, utilizing the existing locking mechanism as a point of structural failure. That's specialized knowledge. You can't learn that from a YouTube video, not in '84. He paused, looking at the floor. And if they were inside, what did they hear when Johnson was killed? They claimed they heard the first big blast, then the second one that blew the vault, and then a series of shots, muffled. Mac looked at the canvas bags left momentarily near the drain before the robbers scooped them up. He turned back to Davis. Where were the 2 other guards during this supposed chaos? Davis flipped open a notepad. Victor Chun, the driver, and Sam Reyes, the shotgun rider, are outside the perimeter being questioned. Their story is consistent. The stage crash knocked the truck on its side. They got out to check the perimeter, and that's when the external blast hit. Mac shook his head. 4 guards. $3 million. 2 blasts. 1 dead cop. This isn't a random hit. This is theater. He walked deliberately toward the patrol car, avoiding the bloodstains, studying the pavement. The cop had been killed while the explosion was still echoing and the sirens were just spooling up. It suggested a level of cold calculation that unnerved him. The murder wasn't a screw-up. It was collateral damage to protect the 3 main players. He stood near the drainage grate where the robbers had briefly taken cover. It was damp, smelling heavily of algae and river silt. A perfect escape route into the labyrinth of old port tunnels. Mac shined his small, powerful mag light down the grate. Nothing but darkness and rushing water. Then, his shoe scraped against something tiny and metallic, half hidden beneath a clump of dry grass that had grown through the cracked concrete. It was small, round, and dull gold. He picked it up carefully with tweezers and dropped it into a small evidence bag. It wasn't a standard coin. It was a metal token, roughly the size of a quarter, but thicker, with an intricate, almost Masonic-like etching of a hawk or falcon, wings spread, carrying a torch. The reverse side bore the motto, faintly scratched in the metal, Fidelitas ante mortem, loyalty before death. What's that, Mac? Davis leaned closer. Mascot, maybe? No, look at the detail. This is personalized. This wasn't bought at a gift shop. Mac studied the piece. It was too small to be a regular challenge coin, but too heavy to be a cheap trinket. It felt weighted, significant. The motto, loyalty before death, felt like a cruel joke given the circumstances. Someone had valued $3 million more than their loyalty to the company. Or maybe their loyalty was only to each other. Mac left the immediate crime scene and walked over to the portable interrogation trailer where Victor Chun and Sam Reyes were being held. Victor Chun, the driver, was rail-thin and jumpy, chain-smoking cools. He was a veteran of the security business, late 40s, with the worn-out face of a man who always saw his life as a countdown to retirement. Sam Reyes, the shotgun, was younger, muscular, and nervously silent, staring fixedly at a stain on the table. Mac took a seat opposite Reyes. He didn't ask about the money, the C4, or the dead cop. The air in the cab, Sam, Mac started quietly. When the truck was going over, what did it smell like? Reyes looked up, surprised. Smell? Metal, I guess. Rubber. No, When you're rolling over, your senses sharpen. The rubber, the vinyl of the seats, the static electricity, the breath of the man next to you. Tell me the smell. Reyes swallowed hard. Just diesel mostly. Victor spilled some diesel last week. We were cleaning it up all morning. Mac nodded, then turned to Chun. Victor, the money transfer today. 3 million. Was there a fourth person on that job? Chen's eyes flickered, quick as a lizard's tongue. No. Standard load. Me, Sam, Thorne, and Reed in the vault. For people total. Always 4. Mac leaned in, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I wasn't asking about the official crew. I'm asking about the real crew. For guards, 3 million. That means someone walked out with an extra share, and that person isn't talking. He pulled out the plastic evidence bag containing the copper token. He placed it on the table between them. The stylized falcon glinted faintly under the fluorescent light. You know this, Victor. Fidelitas animortem. Loyalty before death. Whose creed is that? Chen's face went rigid, his eyes avoiding the token entirely. Reyes, however, turned his gaze slowly to the coin, and Max saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. It wasn't just recognition, it was fear. I've never seen that before, Detective, Chen finally said, his voice husky. It's not standard issue. Nothing about this is standard issue, Victor. A cop is dead. A $3 million payload is gone. And the job was done by professionals who decided that one life was worth less than their silence. Matt countered, his eyes locked on Reyes, who was now sweating. If the people who did this had loyalty to you, you wouldn't be sitting here. You'd be on a beach somewhere. Loyalty only runs one way in this game, Sam, and you're on the wrong side of it. Max stood up, ignoring Chen's protests. He knew he wouldn't get anything else out of them today. He left the token on the table. Stepping out into the early morning sun, Mac pulled his jacket tighter. He walked past the uniformed officers and back to his car. He radioed back to his precinct for a detailed record search on the 4 guards: Victor Chun, Sam Reyes, Marcus Thorne, and Evelyn Reed. Looking for any connection to military service, specific skills, demolitions, close-quarters combat, or even specific coin collectors clubs. But the name Evelyn Reed snagged his attention. She was the 4th guard, the one they said was shell-shocked inside the vault. She was the one mentioned last. She was the one who was supposed to be the subservient guard, the one easily overlooked. Mac parked his car half a block from the precinct and sat for a moment, pulling out his file on the failed kidnapping case from months earlier. The common thread in every crime he'd ever studied wasn't greed. It was the failure of human connection, the feeling of being undervalued, the need to make a statement, often violently. He drove toward the interrogation center again, but this time, he didn't head for the guards. He headed for the only person whose name hadn't been volunteered immediately in the chaos. He found Evelyn Reed. Marie was her middle name. He noted in the file, in a clean, brightly lit room. She was small, mousy, dressed in the heavy, practical uniform of Falcon security. She looked shattered, but Mac noticed her hands. They were perfectly still, resting in her lap. Too still. Ms. Reed, we need to go over your statement one more time, Mac began, taking the seat opposite her. She looked up, her eyes dull and red, but when she spoke, her voice was surprisingly firm, almost rehearsed. I told the other detective everything. I was on the floor when the second blast hit. I saw nothing outside. Nothing. Mac pulled the evidence bag containing the token from his pocket and placed it on the table. He didn't push it toward her. He let it sit. We found this, Marie, near the drainage grate. It has an inscription, loyalty before death. He watched her closely. She didn't flinch. She didn't look at the coin, but a shadow passed over her face, a flicker of an emotion too deep for shock, too controlled for surprise. It was a flash of cold, analytical recognition. I don't know what that is, she said simply. Mac waited 10 seconds. The silence in the small room was heavier than the humid air outside. He decided to change tack, abandoning the script. Tell me about the men you worked with, Marie. Not their job description. Tell me what they wanted. She finally looked up directly into his eyes, and a slow, almost pitying look settled on her face. Victor wanted out. Sam wanted respect. And the man who killed Johnson, he wanted to prove he was still alive. And what did you want, Marie? She took a slow, deep breath, and for the first time, she smiled, a tiny, heartbreaking curve of the lips that held a world of resentment. I wanted to be seen. Before Mac could process the implication of her statement, his phone on the table buzzed. It was Lieutenant Davis. Mac picked up the receiver, his eyes still locked on Marie. McIntyre. Davis's voice was sharp with urgency. Mac, we just got the manifest. The $3 million wasn't standard Federal Reserve cash. It was bearer bonds, specifically marked for transfer. And the fourth guard, Marcus Thorne, the other one who was with Reed in the vault, he just disappeared. His assigned uniform, keys, and weapon were found in his locker, untouched. He didn't check out. He just vanished. Mac's gaze never left Marie. The smile was gone, replaced by a deep, hollow exhaustion. He realized he wasn't looking at a grieving employee. He was looking at a participant. He put the phone down slowly. Thorne's gone, Marie. Did he run with the money? Or did he run from the man who killed the cop? Marie didn't answer. She only whispered one word, a quiet, chilling sound that echoed the motto on the coin. Loyalty. Mac knew then. The three men, Victor, Sam, and the mysterious shooter, were the core crew. But Marie and Thorne were the locksmiths, the inside facilitators. And now, one of the locksmiths was missing, leaving the other one holding the key. This wasn't a heist for money. It was an extraction, and the coin was the membership badge. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a fax coming through to the precinct. The computer records from the FBI had returned a match on the token's unique etching. It wasn't Masonic. It was military. It was the unofficial insignia of a defunct, highly specialized, and deeply troubled U.S. Army reconnaissance unit known only by its operational call sign, the Broken Falcon. Max stood up, looking down at Marie. The game had changed. This wasn't local crime. This was a ghost story, an echo from a forgotten war now manifesting violently in Port Beaufort. You're coming with me, Marie. We have a long night ahead. The silence in the small interrogation room was heavy, broken only by the low hum of the fluorescent lights. Evelyn Marie Reed sat across from Detective McIntyre, having traded the shell-shocked victim act for something far colder and more contained. Loyalty, Mac repeated, his voice flat. Whose loyalty, Marie? Yours to them, or theirs to the ghost of Marcus Thorne? Marie blinked slowly, looking at the polished surface of the table, avoiding the evidence bag that contained the Broken Falcon token. Loyalty before death, detective. That's what it means. It's a closed system. You don't understand. Mac leaned forward, pushing aside the initial police statements. He knew the statements were worthless, carefully constructed alibis that masked a deeper, shared grievance. I understand what happens when 3 former military personnel and 2 inside operators decide $3 million in bearer bonds is worth the life of a rookie cop. He had spent the 3 hours since Thorne's disappearance pulling strings, utilizing old contacts in the FBI and Army records. The Broken Falcon wasn't a formal unit. It was a designation. A failed, officially denied mission from the late 1970s involving a special reconnaissance group in the dense, forgotten borderlands of Central America. Their task was to secure and extract sensitive documents and a large cache of untraceable currency, the same type of bearer bonds stolen today, intended for a black ops supply chain. The mission went sideways. They were left behind, rescued only after 2 weeks of brutal jungle survival, and then officially discredited and silenced. The money, the bonds, vanished, absorbed by military restructuring. The core team, Victor Chun, logistics, late 40s, Sam Reyes, security/CQB, mid-30s, and a third man, Luis Ghost Morales, reconnaissance/infiltration, late 40s. Morales was the only one whose current employment was unknown. Chun and Reyes had signed on with Falcon Security immediately upon their discharge. Chun and Reyes are still here, Marie. If this was about loyalty, they'd be gone, Max stated. They are the diversion, Marie whispered, finally looking up. The fall guys. They needed to be seen, to be questioned. Their presence guarantees the investigation stays focused on the staged crash and the inside job. Mac nodded, making the connections, The stage crash of the armor truck was Victor Chen's domain. The vault breach was the outside job, executed by specialist. The transfer manifest, the key to the bearer bonds, was Evelyn Marie Reed's job. And the disappearance, the exit, was Marcus Thorne's responsibility. And the shooter? Mac asked, his voice low. The man who put a bullet in Johnson's windshield. Marie closed her eyes, a single tear tracing a path through the grime on her cheek. That was Lewis. Ghost Morales. He doesn't take chances. He said the plan was clean, but if there was noise, he would handle it. He handles everything. Mac finally had his three names: Victor, Sam, and Lewis Morales. And the two locksmiths, Marie and the missing Thorne. Mac left Marie in the custody of Davis, who was now overwhelmed by the rapidly escalating case. Mac drove to the precinct's dilapidated evidence lab, a basement room that smelled of mildew and old chemistry. The forensic team had just finished processing the drainage grate. The initial report confirmed the escape route. The sewer system under the shipping yard connected directly to the old Port Beaufort Creek. The flow of water was swift at that hour. The team had tracked the exit point to a derelict fishing pier known locally as the Tangle, an area of abandoned docks and dense marsh grass 3 miles upstream. More importantly, they found traces of the haul. "We found this, Mac," said Dr. Lena Dubois, the lead forensic tech, a woman whose energy defied the lab's gloom. She held up an evidence bag containing a small, jagged piece of treated nylon. Underneath the grate, caught on a snag of rebar. It's a fragment of a specialized canvas bag. Nothing standard issue for the Federal Reserve. Custom, industrial grade, waterproof. And the money? The bonds weigh a lot less than cash. $3 million in bearer bonds, sealed in one of these heavy bags? They could easily carry it. She then pointed to a glass slide under a microscope. "Look closer. We also found particulates." Mac peered into the eyepiece. Beneath the fibers of the nylon were tiny, iridescent blue-green flecks. "Paint," Dubois explained. "Not the kind you buy at a hardware store. It's marine-grade, anti-fouling paint. Very specific blend, popular in the late 70s and early 80s for high-speed coastal craft. Not fishing trawlers. Think smugglers or rapid response patrol boats." The pieces clicked into place. The bearer bonds were secured in a waterproof canvas bag. Lewis Morales, Chun, and Reyes had used the sewer to reach a fast, waiting boat, which was likely docked at the Tangle, the old pier. The sudden, brutal murder of Johnson had merely changed the first leg of their escape from the road to the river. Mac ordered a sweep of the Tangle, focusing on any registered boat sales or derelict vessels fitting the description. That it was mid-afternoon when Mac arrived at the Tangle. The sun beat down mercilessly, boiling the humidity into a thick, visible haze. The pier was a cemetery of rotting wood and rusted machinery. Seagulls cried overhead, the sound echoing the sense of abandonment. They found the boat roughly an hour later, hidden beneath a tarpaulin in a tidal creek inlet behind a disused oyster packing plant. It was a 20-foot Scorpion model, fast and stripped down, with powerful twin outboards. The hull had visible scrapes from being moored hastily, and its bottom was freshly coated with the exact blue-green, anti-fouling paint Dubois had identified. The boat was still warm. They had abandoned it quickly, perhaps because they knew the forensic trace would lead here, or perhaps because their next move required them to be inland. Inside the cabin, the team found nothing useful. No bonds, no weapons, no clothes. Only one thing, wedged beneath a loose floorboard, a heavily used leather-bound journal. It wasn't Morales's. The handwriting was meticulous, neat, and technical. The first entry was dated 4 years prior. August 14th, 1980. Started at Falcon. Boring. Predictable. Perfect. This is the new front line. The waiting game. Need to get Thorne on board. He holds the numbers. Mac immediately recognized the style. This wasn't the rambling confession of a guilt-ridden man. It was the precise, observational log of an analyst. The handwriting belonged to Marcus Thorne, the missing vault guard. Thorne, the logistics man, was their planner, the man who knew the Falcon security internal systems intimately, and the man who, according to the log, held the numbers. Max sat on the pier, the salty, decaying air pressing around him, and began reading. The journal detailed 4 years of routine, interrupted by cryptic notes on the package, the bonds, the unit, Chun, Reyes, Morales, and the debt. The social commentary Mac was looking for was etched into every page of the journal. Thorne, like Marie, was a non-combatant, a systems analyst who felt betrayed by the bureaucracy that dismissed the veterans who fought for it. They weren't just stealing money. They were executing a complex, years-long operation designed to extract resources they felt were stolen from their crew after the botched mission. Entry, May 12, 1984. Lewis says he will not leave Port Beaufort. The plan was to be fast, clean, and invisible. But Lewis says the bonds connect to the Shadow Fund, where the money disappeared the first time. He doesn't want to disappear. He wants them to know he took it back. He wants a statement. Reyes and Chun are jumpy. They just want the money and the cabin in the woods. Lewis wants the war to continue. The journal confirmed the friction. The crew wasn't a unified front. It was split between those who wanted to run, Chun and Reyes, and the one who wanted to make a point, Morales. Mac flipped to the final entry, dated July 8, 1984, the day before the heist. Entry, July 8, 1984, 11:45 p.m. Everything is set. Marie secured the manifest. The truck is prepped. The exit is the river. But Lewis changed the secondary rendezvous. He's cutting out the cabin and diverting the three of us, Thorne, Lewis, and the package, to the old base. Says the woods are too obvious. The base is the only place left in the world where no one will find us. The ultimate dead drop. He gave me the coordinates for the meet, post-extraction, but I do not trust him. Lewis's loyalty is only to the war. I need to move faster than he thinks. The coordinates are Bolcembol 34.819 IRC N 81.334 IRC of. Mac felt the slow burn of realization. The whole elaborate heist, the stage truck, the decoys, the sewer escape, was simply a high-stakes distraction for a planned double-cross. Luis Morales hadn't run with the $3 million. He had run with Marcus Thorne, the man who held the bonds and knew where to cash them. And Morales intended to take both. The coordinates led Mac directly to the heart of the truth. 34.819 degrees north, 81.334 degrees west. Mac recognized the area. It was deep in the South Carolina backcountry, far from Port Beaufort. It wasn't a cabin. It was an abandoned, officially deactivated U.S. Army training facility, a ghost base where the Broken Falcon unit had been trained and ultimately betrayed years ago. The pseudo-resolution hit Mac with the force of a punch. Chun and Reyes were still being interrogated back at the depot, convinced they were holding the line for their share, not realizing their cut had just been handed to the real players. The money wasn't the story, the place was. The ghost base was their point of origin, their final sanctuary, and likely, the location of the final act of betrayal. He looked at the precise coordinate entry in Thorne's elegant handwriting. Thorne had written it down not to remember it, but to leave a breadcrumb. Thorne hadn't run with Morales. He had run from him. He had taken the bonds and fled to the only place he thought Morales wouldn't expect him to go, the predetermined rendezvous, leaving the trail for the police to follow. Mac got up, the humid air suddenly feeling cold. He radioed Davis. "Lieutenant, release Chun and Reyes. But keep them on a tight leash. They're going to lead us to the bonds, but they don't know it yet. Their money just ran north." North? "Mac, what about the dead cop?" Davis demanded. "The man who killed your cop is hunting the man who has the money, Davis. We're not chasing robbers anymore. We're chasing a former ghost from a covert unit who is hunting his own quartermaster. The crime scene is over. The pursuit just began." Mac folded the journal carefully, placing it into his jacket pocket. He got in his car and pointed it north, toward the South Carolina border, toward the precise coordinates and the heavy, damp woods surrounding the forgotten base. He knew Luis Morales, the ghost, would be there, and so would Thorne, waiting for the cavalry or the executioner. The last word in Thorne's journal entry hung in Mac's mind. "I need to move faster than he thinks." Detective McIntyre drove the 7 hours north without stopping, guided only by the handwritten coordinates in Marcus Thorne's journal. The landscape shifted from the humid, salt-tinged marshes of coastal Georgia to the cold, dense pine forests of interior South Carolina. At 34.819 degrees north, 81.334 degrees west, the road disappeared entirely. The abandoned base was a place the U.S. Army had done its best to forget. It was an annex of Fort Jackson, a specialized training ground codenamed Outpost Cerberus, used briefly for highly classified reconnaissance work in the late 70s. The birthplace of the broken Falcon Unit. Rusting chain-link fences, breached by years of neglect, marked the perimeter. The air here was dry, smelling of damp earth and pine needles, a sharp, cold contrast to the port's heavy diesel scent. Mac parked his sedan half a mile away and proceeded on foot. The rain began, a cold, steady drizzle that added a fresh layer of cinematic gloom. He moved with the practiced quiet of a man who had done this too many times, navigating overgrown, training obstacles and dilapidated barracks. He found a rendezvous point not in a building, but the center of the former parade ground, a concrete slab, cracked and stained, beneath a solitary, massive oak. There were signs of violence, but not the explosive chaos of Port Beaufort. Here it was contained, professional and quiet. A faint, metallic smell, not blood, but something coppery and spent, clung to the air. Mac drew his sidearm, its weight familiar, and moved slowly toward the oak. He found Louis Ghost Morales there. Morales, the cold, efficient killer who shot Rookie Johnson without hesitation, was sprawled face down near the base of the tree. There was no visible trauma, no massive exit wound. Mac knelt, his gloved fingers touching the man's neck. Cold, dead for at least 3 hours. Louis Morales, the ultimate operator, the ghost who was supposed to be untraceable, had been killed by someone as good as, or better than, himself. Mac turned the body over. There was a single, precise entry wound, a small, dark hole just beneath the sternum. A silenced round, fired at close range. Morales had never even had time to draw the heavy military knife sheathed to his tactical vest. The hunter got hunted, Mac murmured to the wind. He looked around. The only trace of the final meeting was a small, high-end aluminum briefcase, resting neatly against the trunk of the oak. It wasn't the rugged canvas bag used for the extraction. This was for a clean, formal exchange. The briefcase was locked. Using a small, specialized tool from his kit, Mac carefully pried it open. Inside, it wasn't the bearer bonds. It was 3 objects. A stack of U.S. Treasury certificates, $50,000 in spendable, legal currency. A single, thin flight manifest detailing a civilian transport charter from nearby Charlotte to a private airstrip in Argentina, dated today, 2000 hours Eastern Standard Time. The leather-bound journal of Marcus Thorne, which Mac had already read, but this time a new, single page was glued inside the back cover. Mac pulled out the page. It wasn't written by Thorne. The handwriting was Marie's, Evelyn Reed's, neat, clinical, and devastating. The letter was addressed to McIntyre, confirming the crazy plot twist, the betrayal of the ghost. Mac read Marie's note under the cover of the oak's heavy branches, the rain pattering softly on the decaying leaves. Detective McIntyre, if you are reading this, it means I was seen after all, not by my crew, but by the others. The true loyalty was never to the Falcon Unit. That unit died in the jungle. The loyalty, Mac, was to the debt itself. Louis, Sam, and Victor believed they were taking back stolen money. They weren't. They were retrieving evidence. The $3 million in bonds was the shadow fund, the black budget for the very operation that abandoned them. When they stole it back, they didn't just steal money. They committed an act of war against the people who held those bonds, the true power brokers who orchestrated the initial mission and its official denial. Louis wanted to keep the bonds to make a statement, to prove the conspiracy. Marcus Thorne and I, we only wanted out. We were the analysts. We understood the numbers. Thorne realized Louis was too volatile, too tied to the past. and that killing the cop in Port Beaufort ended any chance of a clean escape. Lewis's war was never going to end quietly. Thorne and I made a deal through a channel I established months ago. Give the bonds back to the Shadow Fund owners. In exchange, they erase Thorne's and my past and guarantee us anonymity, including protection from Lewis Morales. Thorne brought the bonds here for the exchange. He paid his debt to the system with the very evidence Lewis wanted to expose. Lewis Morales arrived first, tracking Thorne via a hidden transponder he put on the package months ago. But the cleaners, the people who came for the exchange, were already here, waiting for the package. Lewis walked into an ambush meant for anyone who showed up with the bonds. He tried to fight, but he was just a ghost, Mac. And ghosts could be erased. My loyalty, detective, was to survival. I gave you the 3 names, the coin, and the trail, just enough for you to track the case to this dead end, tying up the loose ends and ensuring Lewis's story dies here. Thorne is safe now, long gone with his ticket to Argentina. I am here, in custody, a victim who cooperated. I'll do my time for the inside job. It's a small price for a quiet life. I want to be seen, Mac. And now I am. The cost of being unseen is death. The cost of being seen is a long, quiet life spent under a constant shadow. Mac folded the note. The irony was a bitter taste in his mouth. The entire complex, violent heist, the blasts, the sewer escape, the dead rookie, the dramatic chase, was merely a cover for a private exchange, a corporate cleanup operation where the true enemy was paid off to ensure silence. Lewis Morales, the ghost who sought justice, was assassinated not by the police, but by the very system he was trying to expose. Thorne had achieved the ultimate betrayal, trading his comrade's life and the truth for his freedom. The bonds were gone, returned to the shadowy government fund from which they originated. Mac had the murderer, Morales, but he was dead. He had the money, the bonds, but they were beyond recovery. He had the mastermind, Thorne, but he was already airborne. Mac radioed Davis, giving him the coordinates, the body, and a deliberately simplified account of the final moments. A gunfight between Morales and Thorne over the bonds, with Morales killed, and Thorne escaping with the cash. He omitted the part about the Shadow Fund, the cleaners, and Marie's note. He knew that some truths were too vast and complex for the official record, especially when they involved power beyond the police blotter. He drove back to Port Beaufort in the growing darkness, the silence of the pine forest replaced by the rush of the highway. He found Marie, Evelyn Reed, still sitting in the interview room. He placed the broken Falcon token on the table. Thorne made it, Max stated. Morales didn't. The money is gone. Marie looked at the token, the symbol of their failed unit. She finally picked it up, her fingers tracing the faded motto, Fidelitas Animortem. We all pay the debt eventually, detective, she said softly, tucking the token into her sleeve. The betrayal wasn't about the money. It was about choosing to live in the present instead of dying for the past. Marie was indicted on conspiracy charges. She served 3 years, cooperated fully, and was released on good behavior. Victor Chun and Sam Reyes were cleared of everything but minor theft and dereliction of duty, returning to quiet, unremarkable lives, always looking over their shoulders for the next ghost. McIntyre closed the case as a domestic dispute gone lethal, a theft involving military veterans who broke down under pressure. The death of Rookie Johnson, however, remained an open wound. It was the only part of the story that was genuinely pure, senseless, brutal loss. He went back to his office, the stale air conditioning his only companion. The heavy, gold-toned, broken Falcon token, which he had discreetly retrieved from the crime scene, now rested on his desk, next to his worn copy of Thucydides. The book taught him that war was permanent, only its location changed. The case was closed, but the shadow remained. The truest ghost wasn't Lewis Morales, but the debt that the state failed to repay, a debt that always demanded a violent settlement. And sometimes, the worst crime isn't the one that is committed, but the one that the world agrees to forget. Sometimes, crimes aren't solved. They're simply laundered by the silence of the powerful.